Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and it is a well-established fact that I do not like the Pokemon Jumpluff. Even back in the day when Jumpluff was winning regionals left and right, I didn't really enjoy playing it. I felt like the Pokemon was very RPS. Well, times have changed, and in today's video, I'm actually saying nice things about Jumpluff. Today's team is Shadow Kanto Ninetales, Shadow Malamar, and Jumpluff. This is a team that I saw a South Korean trainer named Roroy playing. They were able to pilot it to rank 6 in the entire world. I ended up trying the team for myself, and honestly, Jumpluff was phenomenal. I think Jumpluff, especially its defensive profile, is very strong in the current meta. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we pick up a pretty favorable lead in the first match, leading Shadow Kanto Ninetales into Mimikyu. Now these battles are going to be done on the new system, so no Competitors Cup today, so we are going to be encountering quite a few Mimikyu. One thing I really like about this team is that every member of this team has a winning matchup against Mimikyu. So if your opponent has a Mimikyu anywhere on their team, you're probably going to be at a team comp advantage. My opponent did let the Disguise break on the first Weather Ball, and they no-shield the second. They're trying to hold on, make it to the Shadow Sneak, but I will get the full farm down. I do exit with a Weather Ball loaded as well, which should be very helpful. My opponent sends in Mantine, and I do not want to concede this farm down. So I fire off the Energy Ball to get some nice chip damage. My opponent will put up the shield, and then it's time to send in Shadow Malamar. Shadow Malamar is the default save switch for this team. The team that I featured yesterday used a Shadow Malamar lead, and we saw how strong Shadow Malamar is in the meta. Well, this team uses a Shadow Malamar save switch, and is still incredibly strong. I believe over the games that I've played with this team, I have about an 80% win rate. The team has just been unbelievably powerful. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is going to be Unova Stunfisk, and they are just triple weak on this team to Jumpluff. Even Mantine, which has super effective damage with Wing Attack, does have a pretty bad matchup into the Jumpluff. I tank the Discharge, that does absolutely nothing, and now I can fire off the Energy Ball. Energy Ball is guaranteed to take the knockout. My opponent saves the final shield in the back for the Mantine, but they're just in such a difficult position. Even though my Jumpluff has already taken damage this game, Twister just does absolutely nothing onto Jumpluff. Jumpluff is just so incredibly bulky. I'm able to land the Energy Ball. They can go for the Twister. I don't even know if Twister is going to two-shot here. Twister lands, Jumpluff able to tank that effortlessly, and now go for Energy Ball number 2. I have a charge stack loaded on Malamar, so my opponent can never afford to shield. I just send in the Ninetales, Ember down the Mantine, and take the game 1 win. We move to the next match, leading Shadow Canine into Shadow Pidgeot. Now this is a matchup that I'm not super familiar with, but what I do know is that no Pidgeot player knows how to throw a move that isn't Air Cutter. So anytime I play against the Pidgeot, I almost always no-shield, and I feel like 95% of the time, I end up no-shielding an Air Cutter, which puts me in a really good spot. I end up no-shielding. What do you know? They bait with the Air Cutter. Now I'm able to make it to a second Weather Ball and really ramp up the pressure. This Weather Ball is going to be no-shielded. I pivot into the Malamar, trying to snipe them down. It looks like they did wait a turn there to see if I switched, but unfortunately, I can't quite Psywave down before they're able to make a move and pressure away my shield. At the very least, I have a Malamar up energy. My opponent sends in a Diggersby, and if Diggersby is the switch-in, how weak are they to Malamar in the back? I know I'm going to need 2 charge stacks to take the knockout, so I will go for the foul play first. They will make the Scorching Sands, but it appears they're very weak to Malamar, so I'm always going to be investing in this Pokemon. They're going to pivot out. It's going to be Mimikyu in the back, and if you see a Mimikyu basically anywhere on your opponent's team, you've almost always won the game. I fire off the foul play just to break the Disguise. I can make it to foul play number 2 to force the shield, and then once the Disguise is broken, they have no Protect Shields, I just send in Jumpluff, and then Jumpluff is just on cleanup duty. Now, eventually with this team, I did end up building a better IV Jumpluff, so at the course of these games, you might end up seeing a non-shiny Jumpluff. That Jumpluff just has significantly better stats. This Jumpluff is pretty mediocre. 4-7-13 is not good stats by any means, but Energy Ball will be taking the knockout, and Diggersby is just going to get shredded by Jumpluff. Again, Jumpluff's defensive profile is just so strong in this current meta. We pick up a very strong lead in the next match, Shadow Kanto Ninetales into Fearow. You might think Fearow is Drill Run, so why is this a good lead for Ninetales? It all comes down to pacing. The Shadow Kanto Ninetales can land a Weather Ball and then Ember down in the 2s, guaranteeing that I always get rid of the Fearow, or at very least, I'm able to get the Fearow very low. My opponent tries for a catch on a Stunfisk. Trainer, you cannot save switch Stunfisk anymore. I bank a million Kanto Ninetales energy and then send in Jumpluff. Look at how little damage Discharge does, man. Stunfisk is just absolutely pathetic in this matchup. Jumpluff is just such a hard wall. They can go for another Discharge. Jumpluff just simply never going to care. Firing off the Energy Ball. An Energy Ball will put them very low. I'm going to make another Energy Ball. My opponent catches onto Empoleon, but genuinely this is still very valuable damage. The Energy Ball is going to land, and now I can pivot out and send in Malamar. I do have a very high ranked Shadow Malamar, so I know that I will always survive a Hydro Cannon and 5 more Metal Sounds. So I will be able to get a double up on foul plays and really just make life uncomfortable for my opponent. If they don't want me to force a shield against one of their back Pokemon, they're going to have to shield here. They end up over farming, and that's going to allow me to pressure weight both shields. So they very clearly value the energy on the Empoleon, but I should be able to send in the Jumpluff. They pivot out, sending in Fearow. Fearow makes a move, but I have so much energy on the Kanto Ninetales that honestly, the Jumpluff getting sniped down isn't a problem. I can just send in the Ninetales, get the full farm down, and I have 100 energy and back-to-back energy balls. So it doesn't really matter what gets sent in here, as the energy ball is going to be knocking out no matter what. They send in Empoleon, they win charge stack priority, but I still have the Protect Shield, and I'm always going to be winning charge stack priority over the Unova Stunfisk. So the Stunfisk was able to bank a move, but it's just not going to matter. Energy Ball KOs the Empoleon, back in comes the Stunfisk, but they're just going to be losing that charge stack priority tie. The energy advantage on Kanto Ninetales just really set us up for success, but Jumpluff still does an amazing job of shutting down Stunfisk. We move to the next match, seeing a Pokemon that I haven't seen this season a whole lot, and that's going to be Togekiss. Now, this Pokemon was everywhere the past 2 seasons, but it feels like with Fearow getting the cheaper Drill Run that Fearow has kind of taken its place. I'm not too familiar with the Kanto Ninetales Togekiss matchup, but I'm hoping it's pretty similar to the Fearow matchup, where I can just land a Weather Ball, farm down in the 2s, and basically try and use my shields in the match on either one of the 2 Shadows. If I end up using my shields on my Shadows, I feel like I'm going to be in a pretty good spot no matter what. And in this case, I could have got the full farm down. They're forced to pivot out as they send in a Swampert. Well, the Swampert's giving me the final shield, or it's getting one shot. Turns out they're just getting one shot. Entire Swampert down the drain. In the back is Hisuian Electrode, and this game is over. I can just stay in with the Ninetales. I will be able to pressure away their final Protect Shield and pressure away all their energy. And then, once I have that, I can just send in the Jumpluff. Jumpluff is just so incredibly good in the zeros, and having 2 Shadow Pokemon with Jumpluff, you're so frequently able to set up those Zero Shield scenarios, and then Jumpluff is just an absolute terror. It's just simply too bulky. It has a really good moveset. It hits way too hard. Acrobatics lands, my opponent's had enough, and they will resign the match. We have a blast from the past in the next match as I lead Shadow Kanto Ninetales into Shadow Scizor. My opponent save switches into a Azumarill, and this is where things could get a little bit scary. I don't have a strong answer to a Azumarill on this team. I landed the Energy Ball, get the Energy Ball debuff, and I stay in as they chip me with a Resisted Ice Beam. Now I can throw 1 Ember, defer the bubble damage onto the Jumpluff, and even with their energy head start, I will still be able to outpace. If they weren't at -1 defense because of the Energy Ball debuff, I don't think this next Energy Ball would KO, but it does take the knockout, and if my opponent brings back in Scizor, I think they're going to be in for a pretty rough time. Even back when Scizor was in its prime before Bullet Punch got nerfed, regular Jumpluff was a problem for it. My opponent will now fire off energy. Oh, they're actually on X-Scissor. I was going to say that Night Slash wouldn't do a lot, but X-Scissor actually does quite a bit. But guess what? Even with X-Scissor landing, I still think I make the acrobatics. Yeah, I would have gotten there, and that's going to force my opponent to fire off a Night Slash. I do have energy still stored on that Kanto Ninetales, and I'm up a shield, so I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. In the back, they have a Shadow Kanto Marowak. This feels like a team that would have been top meta like 6 months ago. Now, Marowak and Scizor have both been pretty heavily nerfed since then, but it appears it might be retro day because my opponent is breaking out the old team to see if it still works. Now, if I was down a shield here, this could be pretty scary, but the good news is I had a 2-0 shield advantage, so Shadow Malamar will be able to close out the game. Again, trying to not use shields on Jumpluff sets up either one of the 2 Shadows to be able to just absolutely run a roughshod across opponents' teams. I fire off the foul play, knocking out the Marowak. They can bring back in the Shadow Scizor, and I haven't played against Scizor in a while, but neutral Superpower, I imagine, will take the knockout. Superpower lands, Scizor falls, and that's going to be a win. Hopping to the next match, leading Shadow Canine into Mimikyu. Once again, we should be in a very favorable position. I fire off the Weather Ball right away, and again, I'm just going to be zero bubbling here because I know it's either going to be shielded or break the disguise, so either way, it's never going to be doing any damage. I did notice on Mimikyu leads, players try and play this matchup a few different ways. Some of them did end up shielding the first Weather Ball, just so that way they could keep their defense stat intact for longer and overall have a healthier Mimikyu for longer in the game. However, most, I would say, just ended up letting the disguise break right away. I think either way, Kanto Ninetales should still win the 2s no matter what, just because of its absolutely brutally efficient pacing. I didn't want to let my opponent CMP tie there, so I overfarmed, build up to the back-to-back, and at this point, they should just let the Mimikyu go. And what do you know? I've invested 2 shields in one of my shadow Pokemon. My opponent sends in Lickilicky, I send in Malamar, and it's going to be Tinkaton in the back. At this point, this game is over. I intentionally saved the energy on the Kanto Ninetales and pivoted out in case it was Tink. It is Tink in the back. I'm able to make it to a second superpower as well, and this should basically take the knockout. Oh, they're barely able to hang on. 1 HP remaining on that Tinkaton. Tinkaton is going to be full sending Gigaton Hammer, but I can always just win the game with Jumpluff. The regular Jumpluff does have a winning matchup against Lickilicky. Now, my opponent is up energy and up a shield, but because of the insane bulk of regular Jumpluff, this is actually a winning matchup when energy and shields are even. So, even though they have a shield advantage, I have a move stored on the Kanto Ninetales, so I'm still just going to be winning this game anyway. This endgame is going to take quite a while to play out. My opponent may have been on an Earthquake Lickilicky because I believe they only went for Body Slams in this matchup when Shadow Ball is more efficient, but either way, it's not really going to matter. I was able to get the shield with the Energy Ball bait, then I can full send the Acrobatics, and Acrobatics should put them in range where I can snipe them down with the Energy Ball. My opponent undertapped there, trying to predict the combo play, but now I can just send in the Kanto Ninetales, fire off the Energy Ball as it does do ever so slightly more damage than Weather Ball. Energy Ball KOs the Lickilicky, and the team just keeps on cooking. We move to the next game, Shadow Kanto Ninetales into Kingdra. This is a very bad lead. I save switch into Malamar, I make the foul play, and Shadow Foul Play is going to do a ton of damage onto the Kingdra. Kingdra no shields, that's really good for me. This is enough for the Surf, so I will respect it with a shield. Surf would do a lot of damage, they do full sends, another energy drive, and my opponent sends in Mantine. This is pretty awkward. My opponent has clearly played against too many Kanto Ninetales, and they have decided they are not going to lose to Kanto Ninetales anymore, because this team is so hostile into Kanto Ninetales. This is going to be really tough. Water Pulse will take the knockout. I'm kind of forced to bring back in the Ninetales. Ninetales doesn't have a lot of play here. I farm up. I try for the Water Pulse catch, but look at the patience from my opponent. They're just playing absolutely perfectly. I figured that if I could save some energy and catch a Water Pulse, maybe there would be a chance, and they're actually on triple water, so I think that does kind of validate the theory that my opponent has intentionally built this team just to try and be as strong as possible into the Kanto Ninetales, and you know what? It worked. They played well, they had a big comp advantage, my Ninetales just couldn't really go anywhere, and look at this overfarm from Empoleon. They're just playing it absolutely perfectly. Drill Peck is just about going to take the knockout. I try and go for the combo play with the Kanto Ninetales. Unfortunately, I don't end up getting the combo. I end up playing to a CMP type. But either way, with the energy advantage they have on the Empoleon, the fact that they still have a Mantine and a Kingdra lurking, there's just nothing my poor Kanto Ninetales can do. Back in comes the Mantine, and I will concede the match. Man, what a brilliantly played game from my opponent. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty nice lead. Shadow Kanto Ninetales into Feraligatr. My opponent tries for a catch onto Altaria. I bank a ton of energy and then send in Shadow Malamar. Shadow Malamar, I believe, does have a better matchup into Altaria than the regular. If I remember correctly, it's due to getting extra Psywave damage. I would have to double check that. This is just purely off memory off the top of my head, but I do believe that Shadow Malamar does do a lot better here. Malamar is able to force energy out of this Altaria, which is even better. My opponent did store energy on that Feraligatr, but what I should be able to do is go for a huge farm down with the Jumpluff. I can even just go for a one-shield farm down. The Feraligatr's only at 5, so if the Feraligatr switches in, then I should just be able to fire off the Energy Ball right away. So I'll have to watch for the switch in there. I try and throw the Energy Ball. I don't know if I missed the button or if it was a forced overtap. But either way, unfortunately, now I'm down 2 shields to 0. I was fully prepared for the Feraligatr switch in there, tried to throw after 1, but unfortunately, it didn't end up working out that way, and now I'm down 2 shields to 0. The good news for me is that I basically have 2 charge attacks on the Ninetales and 2 charge attacks on the Jumpluff, so whatever they have in the back is hopefully going to be taking a lot of damage momentarily. My opponent is going to be waiting down the timer. They will have a catch attempt available, and it's basically the perfect Pokemon that I can see, Diggersby. This team is triple strong into Diggersby. Ninetales beats Diggersby, Malamar beats Diggersby, Jumpluff beats Diggersby, but even still, man, I am very fortunate that this was their final mon. Diggersby is just so helpless against Jumpluff. There's not really anything it can do. There's so much energy stored on the Ninetales as well. They go for the Fire Punch. I wait the turn, and I'm able to fire off the Energy Ball. Now I can pivot and send in the Ninetales, and I'm going to throw 1 in the Energy Ball. My opponent ends up getting the catch onto the Altaria, so a nice catch from them, but I'm at back-to-back Energy Balls, so I can just fire off the Energy Ball, and this is going to land on its intended target, and my opponent realizes there's just no win con there. There was just way too much Ninetales energy, and they will concede the match. We pick up a good lead in the final match, Shadow Kanto Ninetales against Morpeco. Morpeco can paste Psychic Fangs to the Weather Ball, but obviously Psychic Fangs doesn't really threaten, so they're forced to overfarm, and at least bluff that they're going for the Aura Wheel. If Kanto Ninetales is ever able to no-shield a Psychic Fangs, this matchup is really, really good. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite brave enough to call the first one. Now I'm going to fire off another Weather Ball, pressure away my opponent's final shield, and I decide, you know what? I don't think Morpeco's ever full sent at me, so, you know what? If you're going to Aura Wheel me, Aura Wheel me. I know shield, it's the Psychic Fangs, and that works out really well for me. They try and go for a catch on a Jellicent. I'm able to bank an Energy Ball for later and send in the Shadow Malamar. Malamar will be able to survive any one charge stack here. They're going to be full setting Shadow Ball, and now I can look to farm up and fire off Foul Play. They're still healthy enough that Foul Play will not quite take the knockout, but it could potentially set up a farm down for me. Foul Play lands. Oh, I just can't get the farm down. They hang on 1 HP. They would have gotten damage registration error, so I'm forced to CMP tie with the Foul Play and take the knockout. I still do have the energy stored on the Kanto Ninetales, so as they bring in the Morpeco, I'm sniping them down with the Weather Ball. Weather Ball is going to be taking the knockout here onto Morpeco, and I'll never find out what my opponent had in the back as they immediately resign the match. All in all, if you're looking to push elo during this week of Great League, I think this team is a really solid team to do so. This team just keeps it pretty simple. Run strong, staple meta picks, and then just simply play better than your opponent because your team will oftentimes put you in a really good position to succeed. I do think this team is stronger in the Open Great League rather than Competitors Cup, just because this team absolutely farms the hordes of Mimikyu that you'll run into, but even if you do decide to run it in Competitors Cup, it should still work quite well there as well. I think that Jumpluff is just extremely well positioned right now because so many of the very popular save switches like Kingdra, Jumpluff does an amazing job at shutting down. Especially the regular Kingdra. Regular Kingdra just can't generate any kind of offensive pressure into the Jumpluff, and Jumpluff has a very dominant matchup there. Add to that the fact that Jumpluff can just shut down basically any dragon, and that's kind of the only thing that can ever stop a Kanto Ninetales, then those two kind of form an unbreakable core. The problem Pokemon for that core would be something like a Carbink, but with both Pokemon having Grass-type coverage, and specifically with the regular Jumpluff being able to survive Rock Throws for days, then even a Pokemon like Carbink is actually very beatable for this team. So, all in all, I think this team is just absolutely incredible. I immediately understand how Roroy was able to unretire after 2 years away and immediately hit number 6 in the world, because this team is just incredible. Jumpluff, I've had kind of a complicated history with Jumpluff. I really despised it back in its prime, back when Marto Galde was winning every regional championship with it. I believe he ended up winning LEIC with it as well, and I just thought that he was a big driver of RPS. And to be honest, when I tried it day 1 of the season, it felt very RPS. I kept getting aligned onto steel types. Well, that was kind of before people had realized that Shadow Kanto Ninetales was absolutely absurd, so it's a lot more difficult to run steel types than it was at the start of the season. Granted, there's still going to be Tinkaton, there's still going to be Empoleon lurking around, but with Kanto Ninetales being as powerful as it is, it basically becomes the perfect core pairing. Of if your Kanto Ninetales has at bare minimum a neutral matchup, it's probably winning it, and then you'll be able to set up Malamar and Jumpluff for success in the back. So this team has kind of been my go-to team this week, where anytime I run something a little bit crazy, and if it doesn't end up going particularly well, then I know I have this team that I can fall back on, because this team just produces such incredibly consistent results. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated. So thank you guys, always very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.